call the meeting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, thank you so much for all that was done for us. Thank you for this beautiful day, for the wonderful fall weather which we're having, and for the opportunity we have to gather together. Father, we'd ask thee that thou will guide and direct us, that as we discuss the needs of this wonderful town, that we'll be able to make decisions based on those that will benefit the whole. We're grateful, Father, for thy direction. We pray for moisture so that we'll have that which we need. We ask for thy guiding hand, and we do so in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Ty.
It was Gary. That was Gary.
This time, if anybody else would have a different prayer or a different statement of belief they'd like to offer, now is the time. If not, we're going to move on to approval of agenda. Everybody look to the agenda. Everything looks good.
Yeah, I think so. I'll make a motion to approve the order of the agenda.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any disclosure or declaration of conflict from anyone here on any of the items for today? I have none either. We're going to move on. Consent agenda, review possible approval of meeting minutes from October 18th, 2023, special city council meeting, October 18th, 2023, city council meeting and October 30th, 2023, special city council meeting. Too many special council meetings, but that's what we do when we got a lot of stuff going on. Everybody look at those minutes. Everything looked good. I just think out of line, but.
I just, we have two minutes for October 18th, and that was kind of my fault for not getting a clear motion when we were talking about the planning
That's right.
commission. So,
Yes.
so it's on the agenda here. So
Yeah, we're gonna just reaffirm what we voted on.
okay.
Yeah,
So
on the 30th.
otherwise, they look good. Both
Okay.
versions.
Okay,
So
so that's a motion.
sure, that's a motion that we approve the minutes from the 18th and also the 30th special council meeting.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're gonna go into our city department reports. We'll start with Ash Creek. Matt, go ahead. What do you got for us?
Yeah, hope you're all doing good this evening. So next week on the 9th, we will be opening up, well, not opening up, we'll, Haskell will be presenting their GMP, their guaranteed maximum price for the new treatment plant in Confluence Park. With that, so tomorrow we're going to be doing a kind of a subcontractor bid opening to go over that with them. We can choose go over the subcontractors and decide which ones we want to use and what'll be the best value. And then we're hoping to get approval to begin that project on November 20th. They're wanting to mobilize November 20th. So we'll see what happens.
Exciting.
Yeah.
We had that last Tuesday evening. We had an open house over in Lavercan.
Yep.
Some people attended. Some of our board attended. No, it was a good meeting. It was a good meeting. A lot of questions asked. I think you guys answered them really well. If you guys aren't familiar with what he's talking about, we're getting a brand new state-of-the-art sewer treatment plant down in Cholla Creek. It's all basically in a 3-acre piece? We're only using an acre or less.
Yeah, it'll be just a little over an acre.
Yeah, so it's very small, no big open sewer lagoons. When the water comes out, it's good enough to go right back in the river. So, but we're not going to do that. We're going to put it back into a reservoir and reuse it. So,
We'll be cleaning the river.
yes, we'll be making the river much cleaner. So, it's a pretty big project. Right now it's designed to do 1.5 million gallons a day, and the
Peak flow, yep.
and it'll be able to go up to, we easily can add on to make it 3 million gallons a day as it needs to grow. So it's a really neat situation. Very little smell, if any, and the product that comes off of it goes right to the landfill. So yeah, pretty neat. So I'm excited about that. Anything else for us, Matt?
Nope.
We'll
that's
get
all
a
for-
total price on that. I can probably announce that in a couple of weeks. We'll have this maximum guaranteed price.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Merlin?
Okay, just update on call volume for the month of October, just finished up. 469 calls in the district. We had 15 calls over here, 10 medicals and 5 others, fires or other things like that. We did have a rope rescue over here by the spring on Springs Drive. We had a gal walked away from the school over there and fell off the edge there. They set up a rope rescue and got her out of there. So they've just been doing a lot of training. It was kind of ironic. They'd done some big training like 2 days before. So we had a lot of guys that was off duty that heard the call, come over and help set up the ropes on that. The burn season is still open. You just got to get on there and but some days because of the index, it's not going to let you get a permit. If you'll see those days when the smoke stays down the valley. That's the reason for that. We also opened up the new ER in Hurricane on the 25th. Well, not us, but the IHC. But we feel like we've become part of them. We've had probably average 4 to 5 transports a day out of the ER. So people that actually go in, something that they need to be to the hospital. So we would transport them over to the hospital. One day we had 11 transports out of there just in one day. But
How's
again,
that going to affect? What's that going to do to the district? Just
well, it's
curious.
going to make them some more money, but we're hoping that it doesn't come to the point where we have to work something out with the hospital to have a crew on call there, if it keeps that up.
Yeah.
One of my days that we were on, we had 9 transports out and 8 transports in. So it's nice when we can take patients there because it saves us time to go and clear to the hospital, as long as we don't have to turn around and take them back later. So it's kind of a catch-22 sometimes. Majority of the time you can take them in and they can treat them there and release them. But most of the ones that we're transporting down are people that go in privately and then they'll treat them there, and it's something they've got to be admitted or something like that. So most of the people that we take in there, we have a list of who's going to go in and who's not going to go in, if we bypass or stop there. But it's definitely a challenge.
My personal preference?
What's that?
Is it
No,
my
I think
personal
it's-
preference?
That
I'm
they-
just kidding.
Yeah, I would. I took my wife in there the other day, so it's nice to have it there, or in the middle of the night, and it was nice not have to go clear to St. George. So I was able to
the-
treat her and then just go home. So
The 8 that you brought in, were they the same 8 that you took back out?
no, that day we actually took 9 out that came in personal and none out that we took in. So yeah.
That's good
It's
news.
nice because we had the lady that was in a wreck and the airbag went off and she got some skin tears, an older lady. And instead of having to take her clear to St. George, he was able to take her there. She could get treated and have family pick her up or be there. And she's right here in town. So it's going to be nice. It's still a learning curve. And it's just that they only have 2 nurses and a doctor on. So sometimes they get overwhelmed. So, and they're staying busy. They're open 24/7. So.
Have anything else?
Just beware if you do burn a pile of something, make sure it's totally out. Our Leeds fire Sunday, it was a rekindle. It was about 7 or 8 days old.
Really?
When that wind came up, you guys remember the wind that night? Yeah. So then we ended up fighting 13 acres after that in the wind. So
And it was really busy traffic through
yes.
town. It was,
Yeah. Diverted traffic for several
that
hours.
Northbound I-15 all coming through the valley was not great.
So just make sure you get your fires out if you're gonna burn.
All right,
Anything
thank
else?
you.
Anything for me?
Just a big thank you.
All right, Planning Commission, do you have anything, Riker?
Yeah, I just to kind of reiterate the report I gave in Planning Commission last month. I've had the opportunity to attend a few different conferences over the past several weeks. This last week, I attended the Housing Action Coalition here in St. George that kind of provided the more information on the current state of Utah's housing, some potential solutions to that, and some potential options for different options for individuals looking to enter the housing market. I also attended the American Planners Association conference in Ogden, Utah, where they went over a little bit more some of those state legislature changes that affect our subdivision ordinance. I was able to talk with the Utah League of Cities and Towns, and they're going to be providing some more information on how we can come into compliance with that. So we're currently working on that ordinance, and you'll be seeing something come before you here in the next little while. For your information, some of the legislative topics that they brought up at this conference for this upcoming legislative session are as follows. They're talking about prohibiting zoning for less than 2 units per acre, mandating all types of ADUs as permitted uses in residential zones, mandating duplexes, triplexes as permitted uses in residential zones, mandating that X% of residential zones must include small lots and duplexes, state caps on minimum lot sizes, assigning a minimum base density for every city to plan for while making general plans regulatory, definitions for residential setbacks, regulations for modular or prefabricated homes, definitions for garage size standards in single-family homes, additional infrastructure funding for projects like parking structure and utilities that would result in more affordable home ownership. Other ways to make land use processes faster. They want to build on the subdivision changes that came from the previous legislative session. More housing in commercial areas, state standards for parking stall sizes. In addition to that, I attended the One Utah Summit in Cedar City. They reiterated a lot of those potential legislative topics and mainly focused on the importance of housing, specifically a push for modular or prefabricated housing. Currently, we're working on the following ordinances. Ordinances to criminalize code, the landscape ordinance, which would incorporate those water efficiency standards, a site plan ordinance, the subdivision ordinance that I talked about earlier, a parks ordinance, parking ordinance, lot splits, accessory dwelling units, updates to our sign ordinance, among others.
It's a lot. Just a few, just to name a few.
Just to name a few, there's a lot, as we all know, there's a lot of code that needs to be brought up to the current day's standards. So, and Riker's doing a great job at keeping a good handle on it, great handle on that with both the state and the local code here, so.
Awesome.
So Riker, when you're at these conferences, is the whole majority that you're hearing about, people that are voicing their opinions, is it all about increasing density?
So those legislative topics come specifically from the Utah League of Cities and Towns. They're the ones that are informing us about those, the league is. A lot of those, when they gave that presentation, they're different parties lobbying for those up at the state. I know that it was mentioned a few times that affordable housing is one of the top priorities for the state as a whole.
Okay.
Just so you know, at those conferences, you get everything. You know, the Utah League of Cities and Towns, they're up at the state legislature every day. They're fighting for the cities and towns. They're trying to, keep those types of things. But the state has a good, bunch of lobbyists trying to go the other way too. So. And Riker's staying right on top of that in communication with the league, with other professionals, the nice thing about the Planners Association is that we can draw from other cities, see what's working for them, what's not working for them, those types of communication back and forth. And those are invaluable to be able to do that because you can put out an email that says, hey, does anybody have any issue with this? And you'll get 50 replies of, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. And so it's not just the decisions we're making are not just based on what's happening in Little Tokerville. It's
and not even Washington County, it's statewide. And what the state is mandating with their new changes to state code.
A lot of changes.
And we're.
I mean, a lot of these things that I'm hearing that are in the pipeline are basically contrary to our general plan, what the people in this town want. So I'm just kind of curious, who's out there fighting for the rural areas?
It's basically the Utah Leagues is Heath. You've been part of that as well.
Also, they help provide funding for lobbyists to protect the interests of southern Utah, the 5 counties down here in the south west corner of the state. But you're right, there's a lot of push by the governor's office, initiative for affordable housing. And they are really pushing the legislature to try to find and come up with ways that there be better access to affordable housing. And frankly, I think one of the key things they think is if they can, by state law, mandate, this ability to have multifamily in all residential zones, or the ability to do that, or to require mandatory minimum lot sizes much smaller than what we have. They think that's going to lend to more subdivision of smaller lots, selling of smaller lots, or multifamily development that will be more affordable for people to. And so it is a push. We've got the more rural areas of the state. Unfortunately, though, a lot of the population is in the urban areas, and they're pushing it. So.
Riker, just curious, being a city of the 5th class and we're under 5,000 people, are there some of these things we don't have to comply with?
With the new ones that they're contemplating, that would be determined by those legislative changes. So like, for example, specifically for our subdivision ordinance, the deadline for most cities to come into compliance with state code was, I believe it's the end of this year. Our deadline is the end of December 2024 to come into compliance with state code on that subdivision ordinance.
Okay, so we have a little extra time. And then some of the high density homes, and we don't have to do some of that until we're a certain.
Those are potential topics that they're discussing right now.
Yeah, but they haven't passed anything. I'm just wondering what that does for us.
Yeah,
Being
and
where we're so small, if we can get away without doing it for.
Well, that is a possibility.
Yeah.
Some of the
Mayor, we're still exempt from that at this point.
Some of the horse trading that goes on in these negotiations over stuff is that you might find that to get the vote of some of our state legislators representing more rural areas, they may exempt cities and towns of smaller class to try to say, hey, okay, you guys don't have to do it, but any of these bigger cities do. So that's always a possibility.
All right. Anything else, Riker?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you. Afton, it's your turn. What do we have?
Just first of all, thanks for letting me attend via Zoom.
Anything for you?
I'm up in Salt Lake going to the Utah City Managers Conference, and I'm going to speak at that conference on Friday. So on the financial report for the city, Keddington and Christensen came down. They were in town last week. They performed our annual audit, and they'll be back the first week of December at that council meeting to present the findings to the council like we do every week, or every year. They're going to come and do them in person rather than do them Zoom this year, which is great. It went really well. We didn't have anything that they had red flagged or anything like that. So got good feedback on the preliminary findings. This time, 41% of the year has elapsed, and we've only spent 31% of the budget. So we're right on track with our spending. Meeting monthly with Hinton and Burdick to just review our spending, and they're reconciling all of our financials. So we're waiting to hear back on our water infrastructure grant. So we had applied for that grant in the amount of $4.5 million. That's for the 2 million gallon water tank and the associated pump house located on the west side of the city. So we should hear back on that in December. Community update on the Westfield Park with that fencing up. The restroom design is complete. Those restrooms, the construction is set to begin December 1st. JD is collecting the 3 bids on that. We should have those this week. And so we'll know who the contractor is going to be by next week. That kids shade structure has been installed up there. Phase B of the Parkway is still under construction, moving forward on that. They think they've done the final blasting, obviously still addressing dust, rocks on the roadway, traffic speeds, having those weekly coordination meetings, and that's moving along well. I know lots of people reported to the city about the water line break that was down on the south end of the Parkway today, where they hit that water line. That did not affect our hurricane. It didn't affect our Tokerville water. That was Hurricane and Lavercan. JP fixed that very quickly. No injuries, no other health and safety concerns were reported with that incident. But lots of residents saw that there was water on the roadway there and saw that kind of gushing. So Settlers Junction, they're pushing for an opening in December. They're trying hard to meet that date. That's the RV park on the north end of town. Firelight is moving forward with some site work for the water tank that is scheduled to begin next week after they have their pre-construction meeting. We are, like Riker mentioned, we're working with the city attorney on our criminalizing our code. We're working on, we've got the court in place. Now we're working on getting those top 5 ordinances in place. Those are the lighting ordinance, the vicious dogs, the nuisance, including drugs, unlicensed nightly rentals, land use violations, including grading without permits for these major construction projects. So just want to make everybody aware of the emergency readiness meeting that's going to be coming up with the Bents has been working hard putting that on. We'll have that on our flashing signs. That'll be talked about later on in our in the calendar of events. Also wanted to thank everybody who participated in the trunk or treat to make that a really great event on last Saturday. Economic growth, the general plan, we'll have a draft at the public hearing in Planning Commission in December with an updated map that's been tabled while we worked with Sunrise Engineering on getting a new map. So we're excited to see how that is going to come along, but that will have a public hearing in December. Update on our website with Civic Plus. We thought we had that all ready to go, but then we decided we were going to update the bios for city council and other elected and appointed officials, including photos, before having that go live. So December 1st should be the start date for that. So excited about that. Civic Review, just keep in mind that you can apply and renew your permits online, the nightly rentals, home occupation, conditional use, dog tags, things like that. You can reserve the park, town hall. And just a reminder that you can sign up for Express Bill Pay to pay for your utilities. One other update, just as far as water, with that, we are still moving forward with converting water meters in the city to those AMI. They're waiting on some lids so that they can install the rest that they have on hand. They've done 316 of those so far. So they're moving forward with that. And that's kind of the update, unless anyone else has anything they'd like to add.
Do we have anything? All right, thank you, Afton, and you stay on the line because we're going to need you for some later stuff.
Yeah, I will. I've got the background sheets for the agenda items.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
yeah, sounds great. Thanks.
Attorney Snow, do you have anything for us?
Nothing that we haven't already covered.
Okay, beautiful. Well, we're going to move in now to our public forum part of the meeting. So anything that is not on our agenda this evening, you have 3 minutes to get up and bring up anything you would like to talk about, and we'll find out if we can address it in our next meeting. Yeah, and please state your name and address.
Kathy Bentz, 370 West Shangri-La. And I know that you all work very hard and spend a lot of hours in these meetings and all these things you have to do. But I just want to ask that you reinstate this public forum for every single meeting. I don't see how it is saving you that much time. I mean, pretty much it's Ray and I that are the ones that are speaking, and maybe we'll talk less and then you won't have to be here as long. But I don't think I think this is something that's really important. It's our only chance to say something publicly in this forum. And so I really would like that to come back. In the Tokerville Sentinel, Brian McNary wrote, as I perused the agenda, I noticed the time slot for public concerns had gone missing. After the meeting, I was told that the city was only going to offer open time every other meeting. If true, this would mean a citizen might have to wait nearly a month to speak about something. Though it can be time-consuming, public access is more important than saving a few minutes. And I want to second that. So I do want to ask, if possible, that it come back and we have that in every meeting, the opportunity for this 3-minute comment period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Ray Bentz at 370 West Shangri-La. I'd like to echo what Kathy said. you know, we're trying to encourage people to participate in city government and all. And when we cut out their opportunity to participate through a public forum, I think that's counterproductive. So, and I know you don't have to do that, but I think it goes a long way to improving the optics in the city. People want to have a right to be able to say something. And again, it doesn't take that long. I haven't seen it, except in certain matters. I'd also, as Afton pointed out, the November 9th, we have the community readiness meeting. At this meeting, we're going to be discussing natural remedies. Becky Johnson will be giving that. And we'll also be showing people and taking orders for antibiotics. We talked about that at the last meeting. So this is a wonderful opportunity if you want to get antibiotics for your family. We're going to show you how to do it at a cost you wouldn't believe. So, and we thank you for all that you do. And we know it's a labor of love. So thank you.
Are there readiness meetings, YouTube?
They're not on YouTube, are they?
They're not on YouTube? The readiness
No,
meeting?
No,
You have to be in? Okay.
Yeah, it's at the city hall, but it's not a city meeting.
Okay.
If someone, yeah, I'm not sure what the rules are on that, but
Privately, they'd have to do it.
yeah. Yep.
If we did
Anybody
it for
else?
one, we'd have to do it for everyone.
Every meeting, yeah.
Right.
It's not technically a city committee.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to bring forward? Okay, we are going to move on to our business items. We'll start off with item F1, discuss with possible action on resolution 2023 uniform fee schedule to modify grammar request fees and updating culinary water meter installation fees.
Yeah, Mayor, this one's pretty simple. It's just the uniform fee schedule again in front of you.
Yep.
We just had to do some updating we had to establish a line item for grammar and just outline how we're going to charge fees for that. So that's been added to there.
Okay.
And then we're just seeing an increase in grammar and the state has outlined how we can charge for those fees. So that's on the fee schedule. And then on updating our culinary water meter installation, it used to read that it was for the 3/4 inch. We're removing that size and we're just creating, regardless of size of meter, it's just one standard fee. We charge the same fee regardless to install those. So it's just the same. So it's just removing the size and just establishing that that's what it is for the connection fee. So pretty simple.
Okay. Any questions on the fee schedule?
No, there's just a little modification at the very bottom to just prior to approval of issuance of permit license and release of information, and they scratched upon receipt.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
very simple change.
Yeah.
good catch. Okay, any discussion on this item? None, I need a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve item F1, resolution 2023 uniform fee schedule.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion at this time? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item F2 discusses possible action on a lot line adjustment for J. Maxwell on Pecan Lane.
This one, Mayor, we're going to have, Darren LaFever's been working on this. It's
Yep.
been before council a couple of times. And so Darren was tasked with finding going back and
Solution,
seeing if
right.
there's a solution and what could happen with that. So Darren has the background sheet on this one.
Perfect.
Mayor and council, Councilman Campbell asked me to put the kind of a history in your packets of where we came from to where we are of the request last, the meeting held on September 2023. So essentially, this initially came before the Planning Commission on September 14th, 2022. It was on the agenda for the Planning Commission, and the discussion of the item was actually listed as a discussion item with Lisa Act and J. Maxwell on a lot line for the property located at 190 West Pecan Lane. So then, just kind of giving you the Reader's Digest version here, is essentially on the business items, it says possible approval and recommendation. These are the meeting minutes, I'm sorry. Darren LaFever gave the explanation on the item and the previous adjustments for the property. Basically, at that point in time, you guys met or the planning commission met and gave direction there to the applicant. At that point, essentially, it went to the city council. They went to the city council on November 2nd, and it was for discussion only. You guys gave them direction at that point, basically that it was, the applicants discussed what had happened in the past, and that they need to move forward. The next meeting, and these are in your packets, so you guys can see them. The next meeting was for December 21st, 2022. With that, the same type of thing at that last meeting, Attorney Snow gave as a memorandum to you guys on the history of the whole entire parcel, which you have in your packets as well. So then as we come forward, September 20th was the next one, which was not the next city council meeting. There was a presentation from Mark. That's where you guys gave staff, so basically staff to work with the applicant to find a solution and to narrow down the possible code violations. So that brings you to today. Essentially, we have met with the applicants and talked about how that would come to you guys and what would be the simplest thing. It's kind of always been on the radar of a lot line adjustment. And so in essence, we asked them to kind of show this map that you're seeing on the there. And basically this, we just need to, we gave them, so I just gave basically this background. So in September, on the 20th meeting, staff determined that the application needs to be submitted for a solution to be reached regarding the Pecan Lane. After considering the Tocqueville City Code staff has determined is that the applicant would need to submit a lot line adjustment application for the private driveway to be considered. With that was the recommendation and that we came to a conclusion for the solution. With that, Riker, did you want to?
Yeah, as you can see on that agenda item sheet, we tried to narrow down those code violations that might come from this application, and those included 1021.8, which references driveways and private driveways. It references driveways serving 2 residential dwellings shall be a minimum of 26 feet wide, and no driveway shall serve more than 2 residences. The next section of code that might conflict would be 1010A-4-1, which is the physical restrictions for the R112 zoning district that require 80 feet of frontage on a dedicated roadway. And then in addition to that, the current culinary water connection on that road serves 2 separate homes off of 1 meter. That does not comply with Tocqueville City standards and specifications. That is why the applicant has provided a utility map proposing 2 separate culinary water connections, 1 for each home.
So real quick, you're just reading that 12 feet and 26 with 2 and 12 on the other. So I'm looking at that blue line. I don't see where they have a little, looks like a 2-foot strip.
2 foot. What are you talking
I'm
about?
just, what's that little teeny narrow where you got the blue and then it narrows up behind parcel 47E,
That's just running a line up.
Is that-
They're all hooked up to the water. 'Cause you got-
that's a water line. Okay. That's just, okay.
These are all just utilities.
Okay. That's just utilities. All right. Okay. That makes sense.
The utilities have an actual letters in them
Okay. I
of
see
what
now.
they are. And so that's what they're doing. So you do see the existing water lateral that goes over and serves the 2 different homes.
Yeah, this is good. Do we have an application? Do they have a lot line application in?
No, because what they asked, they did not submit a complete application. Lisa,
My dad, what was it all yesterday? I read it.
we'll get that to in just a second. So really what happened is we gave them direction that they needed to go this with a lot line adjustment. Lisa met with us yesterday with Riker and myself and said they didn't want to make official application on that until they had spoken with you guys tonight. And so that's where we're at. We've came to a solution, but before they make the application and pay the fee, they wanted to make sure that this is the way that the city council would like, the direction the city council would like to go. There is basically this is an application we have. There are deficiencies still and conflicts with the code, but that's kind of what you guys asked us last time.
We did.
Because we realized that there was no application that didn't have some sort of conflict with the code. And so this was the solution that we came with. I believe that the applicant is okay with making an application and going through that process. But per our code right now, correct me if I'm wrong, Riker, but the lot line adjustment will never come back to you as per our ordinance, our current ordinance. It only goes to Planning Commission. So that's I think that's what part of the reason that Lisa did not want to make the formal application, because it would not come back to you guys.
There lies a problem I can see,
Yeah,
because
the planning commission can't go outside of the code.
they're going to just say no.
It's a non-conforming configuration.
Exactly.
If it doesn't have 80 feet of frontage, then it's a non-conforming lot, and the planning commission doesn't have the ability to go against the code. The recommendation would not.
Doesn't have 80 foot.
It would be the new home that Lisa wants to purchase.
Attorney Snow.
Well, the past portion that they missed was Attorney Snow actually, in the letter that you wrote in the history, recommended a simple subdivision to fix this because of the utility. With the lot switches and
You
all
could
that.
accomplish it.
So if it goes to a private lane, to two and serves only two, then there's possibility that 80 foot, and that's what we needed to talk to council about as well, whether that would be still an issue if it's a private lane.
Or a lot line, we're not supposed to create a substandard lot by adjustment or by subdivision. So
That's the problem then, I guess, is
we would be creating a parcel that has frontage that is less than 80 feet. So to me, they would probably have to get a variance, because the council can't grant variances to our existing ordinance. They can change their ordinance, but they can't grant a variance.
so they're in the question. Rather than making the application from legal counsel, would they be able to just go straight to a variance?
No, they have to submit an application before they can apply for a variance. It has to be
If
denied
you
or.
submit an application, we need to deny it, saying because your proposed plan does not comply in the sense that the outcome will create a non-complying lot or a non-standard lot with less than 80 feet frontage. Once we do that and give that back to them, they can challenge that or ask for a variance because there's been a formal land use decision. So it would go to Bruce, who is city's appeal authority. He can hear their arguments, why he should grant them a variance. If he does, we can proceed with their application.
Okay. And yeah, and that's just what we needed. We needed that direction from you.
Okay.
So it's before you guys, though.
Well, we can't vote on it. We can't do anything. So application has to be made.
This was discussion.
Well, it says discussion of possible action, but there is no action that we can.
So if it goes to planning commission,
They're going to say no.
planning commission probably gonna deny
Recommended
it.
they not grant it either.
And then it'd go to variance. So if it got a variance, would it come back to us, or
No.
how do you prove the
Bound-
utilities at
bound-
that point?
Well, boundary adjustments,
The lot line adjustments, yeah.
lot line adjustments don't come, they don't go to planning commission.
Yeah, so the question I'm having though is if it never comes here, or who's gonna take care of the utility portion of the non-conforming? Like if the variance is granted, it'd be staff would have to.
Staff in their
bring that up.
recommendations, that can be a condition of granting the lot line adjustment. Is that
Is to
they,
complete
is that
that.
they correct they do the separation of utilities.
Come from the appeals authority, though, right?
Are they
When-
asking for a variance from the,
Just planning commission's gonna, because it does not meet code.
yes.
A non-conforming lot.
Yeah, the staff should deny it. Say, we're not even gonna put it on the planning commission agenda so that they don't have to wait for the next planning commission meeting. they can bring their variance request immediately.
They can go, okay,
Ask.
okay.
I thought you had to have a denial before they could get a variance.
Or you
from
could,
it.
you can appeal a staff decision, and their decision is not, we're not even putting it on the agenda because we
Gotcha.
can clearly look and see that the resulting effect of the lot line
Gotcha,
adjustment
okay.
is to create a non-conforming lot.
So, all right, I think we have.
Okay.
Yep.
So Darren, you'll talk with the parties involved with this and?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. There's nothing we can do tonight.
Applicant is here tonight. Are they-
There's several applicants though, right?
I don't know if you asked them a question or not, or. Okay.
So we do we table this item or just?
Well,
Just move on. All right, we're gonna move on to item F3, discuss the possible action on BLM right-of-way application for the Solara project.
So this item is before you. Darren and I met with the Solara project developers. This is for the 200 acres that's over off of Mills Lane. They are requesting access to their property using Mills Lane. And part of that, it's in Tokerville, obviously, and part of that property runs across BLM land. They came and presented their project at our city council probably a couple of months ago, maybe 2 months ago. And now they're asking that Tokerville would support an application to the BLM for that right of way. And so this item is before you for discussion, for possible action. I think Daisy, if you've got those, if you can pull them up on the screen, I think you've got the maps from their engineering firm. And then I think, do you have that one, if you can kind of maybe rotate it a little bit just so they can see how that is. And I think their engineer, they should have a representative from their engineering firm there.
So Rick
From
Meyer is
Bristol.
here from Bushy.
Yeah.
He's the guy in the black hat there.
Yeah, so if you'd like to step up there and we can have the discussion.
So real quick, it looks like there's both axes is going across the BLM land. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Down at the bottom, down south.
Questions you guys have for him?
I don't know if the questions I have are directly for you. It's more just about the maintenance of the roads and all that for the future of the city. That you guys are going to put on city property. So I don't know who answers that question.
Right.
Yeah, that's the discussion right now, Joey, is Solara willing to maintain that road if they're granted access through Tokerville? Are they, how is that?
So Doug is,
Gonna work. That
Doug
was
is
one of our
online.
questions.
Is not Doug with you guys?
Yep.
Doug is online right now.
Yeah, he is.
He just unmuted. He could.
Yeah, I'm online, and I Afton, I think it's up for discussion on the maintenance. Yet we would definitely, if that's part of the decision to go forward with the BLM road, we would definitely find the opportunity to take care of it. If in the future we did anything with Tokerville, we would want to work an agreement where Tokerville would take care of the roads if we did a something in the future with Tokerville.
So the whole purpose of this application tonight is that when you go in and request a right-of-way at the BLM, they want the applicant to be whoever's going to be maintaining the roadways, right? And our thoughts were our intent was that they would be public roadways. Obviously, this portion through the BLM would be for the benefit of the city because it's in the city boundaries.
That's debatable.
Currently, it's
That's
BLM
debatable.
land on both sides, so it's not currently, benefit
Right.
of the city and stuff, right? And so we recognize that and everything. And
The tax base is sitting in the county that's
Yeah.
going to be using
exactly.
the road.
Yeah, we recognize that as well.
So
And
we,
so it is a bit of a tough situation right now, but
Sorry, Rick.
Yeah,
Darren,
go ahead.
so with the roads, if that is in Tokerville, we would still collect B&C road funds for those regardless of where the tax base is.
We would, on the portions that are in
Correct.
Tokerville City, correct, we would.
So
Correct,
the BLM,
right?
if the roads inside the BLM, those would still, if they went to the city, we could collect BNC road funds on all that.
Yes.
Correct.
So do we need to come up with, and that's the question is maintenance on these roads until, if and when or until you do something in Tokerville, do we maintain, I mean, that's a pretty good chunk from there all the way up to the freeway, all the way up Mills Road. Do we do some kind of MOU? At this time,
We would do a maintenance agreement, or a maintenance funding agreement. City would do the maintenance. We would, by agreement, we would have a covenant from the property owner to pay for that maintenance. If they're going to develop and sell pieces, then there's got to be an owners association who would be a successor party to that, so that we can go and send someone a bill for the maintenance.
Ty, you're a road guy. Sorry, Joe, what's that much road, how much BNC would we get? Is it enough to maintain?
It's
Okay.
never enough to maintain it.
Okay.
But
Well, especially if there's additional traffic or use of the road into an area of which we get no
Right.
tax-based benefit from. That's where
That's
the hard
Right,
part
that's the biggest concern with it, isn't the BNC road funds, we know we would get some that could possibly offset some of the maintenance, but like Ty said, it will never be enough to actually maintain that road. The second part of that is that, like what Heath is saying, what Attorney Snow's saying, is that this property actually lies in the county, not in Tokerville.
Right.
Just the road and the access is. So the actual taxes from this would be going to the county. But what we would be using to maintain this would be the BNC road funds. So rather than doing that to a development, that's where we're saying we'd like to, if the council is in support of this, we would like to explore some sort of maintenance agreement where this developer who's developing in the county would be responsible for maintaining that road.
Hey, Afton,
Mm-hmm.
are you taking into consideration our improvement of Mills Lane, which you would be benefiting from, our improvement on Mills Lane into the north side going to Anderson Junction and around, so that, you're getting the benefit of that road being improved and being able to service your other landowners in Tokerville?
Yeah, we've looked at that. Daisy, if you want to pull up, I think they've got their other map for what they're planning for the access on the north, if they were granted access on Mills Lane. If you want to pull it up on the north, it's up by Jerry Eves. Did they submit a second map up there?
They did not submit that, Afton.
Oh, okay.
Right, but I think what I'm talking about, because we haven't solidified a solution with Jerry, but going all the way from our property back up to Anderson Junction, the majority of that Mills Lane is in Tokerville, and you do have some landowners right there that will be benefiting from the improved road, the Mills Lane being improved.
Eventually, maybe.
Well,
Yeah,
and
that's what I was gonna say.
the counter argument to that is that it also creates a level of service and a roadway, if improved, that has to be maintained. And
Right.
Right.
so
I think, would it be smarter to have that agreement in place for the maintenance before we actually approve this, or?
Well, we could
Like, I
approve
mean,
it with an agreement, say,
I mean, we don't know what that, like, if they can't come to an agreement on that
Right.
of the maintenance cost,
well,
then where does that go then?
I think that you could approve and authorize the application to be submitted to BLM, but before, we can withdraw our application. We can-
Right, that was the other thing I was gonna say, is at any
And-
point in
and
time, the city can
before
withdraw their
It's
application.
granted and we accept it, then there has to be a maintenance
Maintenance
agreement in
agreement.
place.
And I
Right.
think
So there will be
there's-
some time, because that process takes a little bit.
yeah.
as well. Yeah, and I think there's also some questions on that north end, how it would tie in to the Jerry Hughes property, but.
That's
There
all,
are some
that's all has to
questions
get
there, yeah.
ironed
Yeah,
out.
they've got a ways to go. This is just a request to,
The
This
bottom
is a
end.
small
Exactly.
piece of the puzzle,
yeah.
And then
unfortunately.
Right, right.
two questions I got. One is, and help me out here with this time maybe, is we had to work with UDOT to realign Old Highway 91 there at Anderson Junction, correct? So would that also apply to Mills Lane on the other side?
So Mills Lane is in the city limits. That's ours.
Okay.
We received the funds for that. Where we'd have to work with UDOT is the interchange connectivity, which is why we have to have that 1,000-foot of staging, which is like on the east side of I-15. That reroute through Settlers Junction was to accommodate that as well. So that UDOT's involvement will be with the interchange, on and off ramps, and making sure we have enough spacing there for them to make those modifications.
And would that apply to Mills Lane also?
Oh,
to
yeah.
do that? So
Only
all
on the
that-
north
all-
end. On the very
right,
north
all
end,
that's
that's
gonna,
all. Yep.
okay. And then the second question is, what would be the term that we would want to consider for the maintenance?
Well, that's, for how long? and
Yeah,
that's-
for how long?
That's something we'll have to.
The earlier of when they annex into the city
That's what
or
they keep
X
saying when
number
they-
of years or whatever. I
When they
mean,
do something with the city is what I've heard a couple of times, but what is that?
Yeah.
What is that?
Right.
What is that trigger,
That's something we'd have to just work out, but in the meantime, like they said, we can pull our application from the BLM, but it takes 6-8 months just to get the application through and done, so, we can stipulate that we can approve their application, let them go forward, we can hammer out some kind of maintenance agreement.
prior
Prior
to
to-
the grant and acceptance by the
It's
city.
exactly, it's our application, not their application, but yes. So that's just a thought. Let them get going on it, we can work it out. And if we don't work it out, we just pull the application. So. Thoughts?
Question on mine.
Who pays for all the work of applying and
The developer.
all the legal stuff?
The easy solution for all of this, for everybody here, is to get BLM to, to agree to maintain the roads, right?
Yeah. He's a comedian too, an
Wow.
engineer and a comedian.
I love your
Awesome.
humor.
They got a blade and a loader. And that's
Just saying.
I'm sure they'd love to go blade your asphalt.
As this is just initial applying for the BLM to go through it. But reading through like the road plan development, nowhere in there that I see anything about they're paying for the road, they're paying for the BLM application.
No one's going to put the road in unless they do. They're going to put the road.
Okay.
They have to put the road
Okay,
in.
but as far as the application, does that need to be included in this? Because it's not. In the road development plan, or the road plan of development that was submitted to us, I didn't see anywhere where they were saying they were paying for it. So I could have missed it,
Who's
but I
going to put it
didn't.
in?
But I didn't
Usually
see
we
it.
don't put something like that in the
Yeah,
POD, but Darren
That's
makes a
not part
good
of it,
point. You
yeah.
could make it a condition of your approval or something like that.
That's what I would probably suggest. BLM's not necessarily interested in how the road that they're giving approval for through their property is going to be built or
Yeah,
funded.
they don't,
Yeah,
And in fact,
I will say that
And in
it is
fact-
in our budget and we are planning on paying for it. So, and we don't have any issue if you did want to have that as a condition of the acceptance of the BLM once it's approved.
Any other questions, Todd? Ty, you got something to say, I can tell.
Well, for me, I hope the developer understands why this is a sticky
Right.
situation for the city. All that ground's owned by the BLM. Citizens are going to be in the county, the tax base is in the county, and we're going to put the tax burden of 2
On
miles of
Tocqueville
road.
City.
Or Rick, how far is it?
It's just over 2 miles. Yeah.
Weird.
Very
So
good.
about 2 miles of road on the citizens here, which we know BNC road funds aren't going to fund that.
Yeah.
So the option, like, as you move further down the road, the thing we could do is you could go calculate what the BNC road funds are for that type of road to maintain it. We could allocate that and then come up with an agreement that allows us to share that cost on the maintenance with what we're given to take care of it.
Oh, yeah.
So we could,
I think
we could find a solution there, but
I'm thinking through my mind how I would draft how we would do this, and we would have to clearly say that we can only bill them for the cost minus the funding that we receive from the state because of the existence of the road.
Right.
So
those are
couldn't
just
double dip.
I mean, I have no problem with this. It's just a matter of making sure that we're not putting another burden on.
Yes.
on
The
citizens.
citizens
So-
of Tocqueville, right. Yeah, if that piece they were developing was in Tocqueville, then it'd be a no-brainer, because that's not, so. Okay. I need some kind of motion.
Motion. It's a motion to approve and authorize the city's issuance of the application to the BLM, and then you can put any conditions on that you want.
Yep. I can't make it, guys.
I know that. Trying to figure out.
Is that how you word it? All right, I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah, that's okay. I thought Ty was.
I was just trying to put all those in there too,
Yeah.
because part of it is, so much of that's going to come up in construction plans and drawings and development agreements, really where you can tie most of that maintenance to it.
I think it
Takes
could be
care of it.
easier, is
Staff.
just make sure that there's an agreement in place prior to the approval of the application.
Yeah, from the BLM.
You know, and you
That's
know,
probably the exact,
that's probably easier than.
you got it there, Joey. That was a good motion.
That's you, buddy.
Mayor, I'd make motion that we approve the application for the BLM right-of-way. That, let's see, upon approval, that we would have an agreement in place for the maintenance of the road through the BLM and the Mills Lane to tie into Anderson Junction.
We need to have that before the application has been approved by the BLM.
And do you want another condition to be that within a period of time that they will
Yeah,
actually install the road at their
Let's a-
expense?
Yeah,
Or that
but
if
that's
and
gotta be in the
when,
construction zone.
yeah, if and when they decide to install it, they acknowledge it's at their expense.
Yeah.
Do we need to put that in this motion, or is that a future?
I think we can at least put that language into a road maintenance agreement.
We would enter into a road maintenance agreement.
Yeah, so will you restate the
That-
motion,
yeah,
just so it's clear
restate
for
it.
the minutes?
Thanks, Afton.
Say it 3 times.
Sorry, Ty.
Fast as you can.
It'll change every time. I move that we approve business item F3, the BLM right-of-way application for the Solera project, and that it would include a roadway maintenance agreement. Does that cover it, Heath?
Be completed prior to
And
the.
Be completed prior to
the
our accepting the
acceptance.
grant of the road right of way.
With what the city attorney stated.
Second.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second.
Daisy, you got all that?
She's better than the rest of us.
Yeah.
Any further comment or discussion on this item? All in favor?
Who gave the second?
Joey.
Joey.
Joey was the second on that, yeah.
Good
Come
deal.
on.
All right.
All right, we are
Thank you.
moving to item F4, discuss this possible action on ordinance 2023, planned commercial zone to establish an allowed use table for permitted uses and to clarify the application requirements.
So Mayor, this came before you already, and there was actually a motion and a vote on it. When it came through on the meeting minutes, when Councilman Sands started the motion, he said, so hypothetically, my motion would be, and then that actually was the motion that was voted on. So we just need Councilman Sands to restate his motion and the vote to be taken again. It passed 4-1. I think Chuck was the one that voted against it. So, yes, if you want to just restate your motion, Councilman Sands.
I would be happy to do that. If you look on page 3, I'd be happy to do that. If you look on page 3 real quick, at the top on the legend, I think there is a little grammatical correction where on the box number 2, it's got wholesale and warehousing in the conditional, in the legend. See that, Daisy?
Yeah, there's 2 legends.
Yeah, so if we could figure out
Probably
the
need to
legend.
delete that line
Yeah.
in between and just keep the legend at the very bottom.
Good catch.
Yeah. Did you catch that, or did your wife catch that one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I caught it. I got to proofread her stuff too.
Well, and Daisy, with that same thing, we've duplicated other uses similar to the above and judged in harmony. That's duplicated as well.
Oh, yeah, it's
So
in
we've
2
got those-
places.
Yeah.
So I guess we can
We
delete
could
the
just
last
remove the
3
top 3.
rows
Yeah.
of that table and we'll have it exactly the way we
As
want.
well. There we go.
Yeah.
A warehouse.
Copy and
That
paste.
has it.
Got crazy.
The last 3 rows of the table deleted. It's
Is
easy
that
for
part of
the
your new
motion.
motion?
Yeah.
So what is
So-
the motion?
Do I need to make the motion, Heath, to put that stuff back in or just to go with what we've got here?
Yeah, to go with what is Your motion was to add back in the RV resort,
No,
tattoo parlor and
the
tavern.
tavern and the tattoo parlor. And then-
Yeah.
And then,
CS on the other one.
Oh, and make
Yeah.
conditional with standards
Yeah.
of the RV resort. Yes, make that motion
Okay.
and make that you adopt this ordinance subject to the last 3 rows of the table being deleted.
okay. So I would make a motion that we approve business item 4, the planned commercial zone, adding back the tattoo parlor and the tavern, as well as correcting the legend. And we also directed staff to come up with a definition for tavern.
I have a motion
Second the motion.
and a second. Any further discussion on this item? All in favor?
Aye.
Chuck, did you vote? Are you
Abstain.
abstaining?
No, I can't abstain.
Well, then you gotta say no.
No.
Okay.
No,
Didn't ask
okay.
me for my vote.
I just asked everybody to vote. All right, item F4 has been approved. We're moving on to item F5, discuss possible action on resolution 2023, limiting the number of public infrastructure districts, PIDs, within Tocqueville City.
And if you guys.
So, yeah, this one has been before you a couple of times, and it was sent to legal review, and Attorney Snow has been drafting on it. This one, as you know, we have 6 PID districts currently in Tocqueville. We're receiving applications consistently, or people coming in or wanting to explore the option of PIDs. So we put it before council just to explore possibly limiting the number of public infrastructure districts. And Attorney Snow drafted the resolution, and that's what's before you tonight.
And then when council met and discussed this, they suggested they wanted some changes to it. If you look at the redlined version, you can see the changes. There was one we made up in the beginning, said meaningful instead of meaning for. But the main part is down here. The city manager made a suggestion that if we are going to find that there is a special circumstance which would allow us to deviate from our general policy, which is not to approve any new PIDs, we have to find that the PID application is in compliance with the city's general plan or current zoning, because we understand that zoning can be, can modify in some ways de facto the general plan, or at least its future zoning map. So, and we're trying to get that clarification on how we're going to regulate our general plan. So that change was made in there. But the other things that were more important, I think, is that we put language in here that says that the governing documents of the PID down in G, or through a development agreement between the PID and the city signed at the time of creation, requires the PID to dedicate all public infrastructure that it funds and has constructed to the city or the appropriate governmental entity as determined by the city. So we want to make sure that the PID is not going to be holding on to the improvements that they create and become an operator of their improvements. Because a PID could create a water system, Ty, and then they could operate the water system and be competing and creating things. So it's
What about like if you go back to 1C, it says, should the city be financially unable or unwilling to accept the dedication? So I think we had a conversation. That was the two questions are kind of with C, and I think it was G, but it looks like G changed. But you were saying that there's a possibility you can't have somebody maintaining the infrastructure, the city infrastructure under the PID compared to, can you explain how that works?
Well, we don't want a situation where we have 2 different quasi-governmental entities, or a quasi-governmental entity like a PID owning and operating a system, and then having someone who owns property within that PID boundaries have to come, one, to the city for land use approvals and authorization to utilize or get, for instance, my example, water service, if a PID was operating a water system, because in a sense, we could approve something, they could deny something, or they could deny something that we've approved and made it not feasible. You've got situations like this that arise. I've seen it with special service districts, not just PIDs, where municipalities have created these entities or multi-municipalities, and they're running into problems with the fact that you have this new entity who, because of the nature that they're operating systems that developers need, they are in fact almost acting like a second land use authority. And
So doesn't C contradict that? Like it would remain
C,
in the PID?
3C or
1C.
1C?
1C. And that's my, I think, and in the old contract before these red lines,
Yeah.
G also, or no, E, 3E also says kind of that same thing. Unless I'm
Yeah.
reading them incorrectly.
No, we can put that. I think that's part of the findings.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, no, that's the findings.
That's
It's
just a
saying, it's establishing that this
the
is the reason
policy
why we would
founded
limit
down
these, because it
into-
could possibly do that. Dave, if you scroll up to the top of that,
Yeah, I see the
right there,
findings. It
those are
just-
part of the
And
findings
1C
that are
is just another
support of the
finding.
policy.
It's not a requirement or anything like that. It's just a finding that
Just a
if
fact.
there's a situation where we can't afford to maintain it, like our budget is being outpaced by the repair and maintenance obligations of all this new infrastructure that's being built by PIDs, we're going to have a problem. And it's going to be incumbent upon people. We may not be willing to accept dedications. We want that as a matter of policy, but we also want to be able to say no. And that's what's one of the basis for number 2, which is the general policy that says that we generally won't approve new PIDs. We will only if all those criteria in 3 can be found. Those are the special circumstances that allow the deviation from our policy.
Right, and in 1C, Joey, that's just saying that with those findings in support of the policy, it's just acknowledging that there could be a situation where if we don't limit the number of PIDs and we don't put this policy in place and consider them case by case, we could find ourselves in a situation where the PID could be operating their own utility water system or whatever.
Yeah, and we don't want that as a matter of policy.
So that's just kind of those findings are just kind of the justification for why we're putting this policy in place, is because we could, if we approved a PID, we could find ourselves in a situation where we're financially unwilling or unable to assume that infrastructure.
So then the addition in H, there was discussion about whether we can or should require the proceeds from a bond issuance of a PID to be held by the city. And it just says that it'll be either held by the city or a third-party bond trustee, which Mr. Entz gave us a nice explanation of what that was last time. Would the city love to hold it? I don't know that we'd love to hold it because it creates administrative requirements, but at least someone other than a kind of semi-functioning PID board would be holding it. And the use of those funds have to be requisitioned and documented and requested and then paid by the bond trustee, which Mr. Entz indicated that is the primary practice when they put these bonds out for on the bond market to be sold. Most bond purchasers want to have the comfort to know that they're not turning around and purchasing this bond, giving the money to a PID that maybe is controlled by 1 or 2 property owners, and that they can so the money doesn't get misused for anything else. They want to know that it's going to be held by a bond trustee, a bank usually, and that the PID is going to have to come to that bank and request releases for work being performed on actual projects that are identified in their governing documents. So that's what H says. I says the governing documents of the PID list all possible public infrastructure projects with specificity that the PID may spend bonded PID funds on, as well as the maximum mill rate the PID can assess and the maximum amount the PID may issue bonds for. So we had that discussion. There was even a suggestion by council at our last meeting that maybe we require them to sequence that.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was
there
saying.
was some concerns that there may be need to pivot based on what the economy and what might be a first priority bonded project for a PID may become the 5th most important project based on what the economy is doing. And it seemed to me like everyone agreed that we would require them to identify what they could bond for or what projects they want to bond for. And that we want their organizational documents to identify the max mill rate and the max bonding limit. So that's what H says.
I.
Or I, excuse me.
So on I, if we added like an estimated list, you know, or
Well, I put a list. They have to list all
have
public.
to list it, but or an estimated timeline for the list or an estimated sequence of the list. I mean, they're still going to be able to pivot, but it would be really nice to know they're going to go put all the water and the sewer in, or they're going to put the tank in, or they're going to like, you know, like that. That's kind of why that was brought up, and that was brought up from Hurricane, as you know.
Yeah,
they needed to know if they went and put all the infrastructure into the property, but didn't have any way to get the other infrastructure to the property.
I
So
see.
that's why that list was in sequences, so that you're going to get the water and the sewer to the property first. Then you can start that second portion of that public infrastructure. That's why that was brought up. But I think you could put a simple, easy fix in there for that.
Could I maybe comment on that?
You bet. Well, that's a
I would-
Justin.
I would love Matt's input on this.
Absolutely. You're the expert here.
So first of all, let me just say, I think what you guys are doing here is really smart. I mean, the PID Act already says that a city has no obligation to approve a PID and that you have no liability if you deny one. But what I see this as is you're basically giving guidance to a future council, whether it's you or somebody else, you know, as to what the criteria, what you think the criteria ought to be. And I think that's pretty smart, honestly. The thing on the sequencing, that is honestly one of the things that has been one of the biggest challenges working with Hurricane City, because in a couple of the PIDs that we created over there, specifically one called Bench Lake, which is more of a regional PID, and then there's another one called Sand Hollow Mesa, a set of 3 that was approved for a specific developer. The city was very specific about sequence and priority. In other words, you will finance this piece of infrastructure first, and then this one, and this one, and this one. And if you don't have enough to finance all these, then the bottom ones drop off the list, or they have to be paid for some other way. I understand why the city wanted to do that, but it has essentially frozen those PIDs and made them, at least for now, completely useless, because the developer has gone back to the city and said, we need to tweak this. The market has changed. The, you know, interest rate structure has changed. You know, our financing capacity is much lower now than it was when the PIDs were approved. And the city has just said, tough, you know, which I'll admit that's their prerogative, you know, but it has really sort of made a waste of the work that was put in by both the developers and the city to create those PIDs. So that's my only heartburn about the,
I don't want to make them
the prioritizing.
I don't want to
and the-
handcuff somebody. I just want to
Yeah.
say an estimated sequencing list, so that, oh, why are you going to start at point B when you need to start at A? You know, that's
Yeah.
what,
You know, and
I don't
again,
know.
I totally understand the reasons why the city would want to do that. I just wanted to share my perspective on that a little bit. You know, from the PID side, as much flexibility as we can have, the better, because, you know, we have to package a bond that can be sold on the open market, and we have to justify to bondholders, and that may not look like what we have to do to justify that may not look like what the city has locked us into. So that's my only
And
hesitation
Matt?
there. Yeah.
Matt, if I could chime in here too, from the city side, if we take a look, say at Pine View PID number 1,
Yeah.
in that sequencing of what you're talking about, this is an example where it actually worked in the city's favor to not sequence. If we look at the items that they had listed, right, that they were going to bond for, and we had like the bypass road, we had the water tank, then next we had Pond Hill Road. And then after that, we had, you know, we've got a sewer lift station, and then it continues on with some other things. That not handcuffing a developer to the actual sequencing allowed the city to say, actually, we would rather have you get to work on a water tank that would benefit everybody rather than working on Pond Hill Road at this time. So that's an example where it was in the city's benefit to have the list of things that they intend to bond for, but not the actual, hold them to the actual sequencing like you're speaking about in Hurricane, where you'll build this first, this second, this third. It allows the city some flexibility to say, you know, work on this and then work on this. So it worked in our favor to not hold them to that exact sequencing is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And I think that it's easy to forget too, that, you know, even once a pit is created, even though it's an independent entity, it's still the city that is setting the standards for what infrastructure needs to be built for a project. It's still
And
the city
approval of plans and
that's
stuff like that.
approving
And I would hope that
plans.
the staff would say, why are you coming to us to install a big water system if you can't even connect to the rest of our water system? You need
Right.
to be you need to be constructing the offsites to get the water here before you do this. I would hope that our staff would be dealing with that and looking at, like Joey's saying, sequencing issues, but
yeah,
maybe not.
Anyway, those are my thoughts. The only other comment I would make is the reference to a development agreement between the pit and the city. I would suggest that is referred to as an interlocal agreement instead of a development agreement.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Matt, while you're standing there, is
Sure.
there, is the 8 years, so in J, it says the governing documents of the PID indicates that the PID does not issue any bonds within 8 years of its creation, and the city may initiate to terminate that. Is that 8 years mandated to us? Can that be shortened?
It
Can
is
that be
not.
changed?
It was put in by me, but there was the discussion that we wanted to require them to build into their governing documents that the right that they would participate with the city, because it will take both parties to basically unwind or dissolve the PID. It has to be the PID itself or the principals of the PID and the city who help create it. And so I put in there, okay, if there's a date certain, if you create this but do nothing with it and you basically shelf this PID, how long can it stay on the shelf without it going out and actually trying to issue bond and building some public infrastructure? Because if there's no limitation, then I think that was, if I remember right, Joey's question or concern was, can someone create a PID, shelf it for 20 years and pull it off the shelf, and then all of a sudden?
Well, I think I was more on this thought process of less time than more.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
that was-
and
that was
Ty-
an arbitrary
5
years or something.
Well, yeah, I was just starting
Yeah,
thinking
8
about like
years
a lot
seems pretty
changes in
long.
8
Well,
years.
and so frankly, I thought about 5, I thought about 10, and then I kind of came just back to 8. And I don't know why, and so
And
yes,
Ty,
that's completely whatever.
If I can just chime in for 1 second there on that time limit. I mean, 5, sure, I would think no longer than 8, simply because a lot of the things that they're going to bond for in these PIDs are going to be capital facilities projects. And we have that 1 to 5 year horizon to construct, and then we have 6 to 10. Our capital facilities spans 10 years. So I would think that by year 8, we need to know if they're actually going to build these or if we need to come up with a plan B.
Well, I think you would
Exactly
know in the
what we're
first,
talking
if they
about.
don't issue a bid in the first 5 year, a bond in the first 5 years, then you're gonna start negotiating, you're gonna start questioning anyway, right?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. No longer than 8.
At least be 8, maybe, and shorter if you want. And I think her point is maybe 5 years is also a
I
good.
like it in the 5 years because then you can look at our general plan based
Yeah.
off like, hey, we have this budgeted here, and then if it moves, then it moves into the next one. So
And I like that too, because we typically update our general plan every 5 years. Our capital facilities is on a 1 to 5 year. We update our master transportation every 5, our culinary water master plan, and then also our water conservation. Those are all 5 year plans. So I would say 5 years if that's an option.
And then the only other thing I would say is we talked about sequencing a little bit, and Heath, you hit exactly what my concern was. I think that's what Joey's is it's like you go build all the infrastructure in the project and you never took the water to it. Maybe we simplify it, and it's maybe the offsite has to be done, and then you can pull the inside, or
Offsite
maybe
improvements
there's some connection there, because that would be the concern. And I guess that our protection as a city, we don't have to take it. You know, if they go build all the infrastructure out there
Yeah.
and they don't ever think to
We
connect
don't want to
it,
accept a
then
water
it just sits
line
out
with
there.
dry lines out there sitting there.
So I mean, maybe we're protected anyways, because it's up to us when we accept the dedication of the
Well, that's why I was just saying
material
like an estimated sequencing table, you know, it's because if you don't say something that gives up leeway, just like Afton saying, just like You know, because it would just be great to say, oh. Well,
So like a
you know, like when you're looking at the
non-binding
PID and you have that
sequence.
table and approval, you're like looking at it saying,
So Joey, you're saying like a non-binding sequence
yeah, just
narrative.
an estimated sequencing, you know, or something, or whatever, however you want to.
Is that
word it.
Maybe we
How do
just
you write
require
that
them
up?
to
Oh, I
present that
can-
to us.
That's what I'm saying,
for
at the
approval.
PID, the PID document of creation, that's why if you have that in there,
Yeah.
that's part of the criteria, then you can say, well.
It's not binding, but we want it, we want a list.
Like, well, why are you doing it this way? You know, then you can question it at that time.
And then they can change it if something else comes up.
Yeah, I mean, and it could be changed
On
at
the
any
end of
time.
I can put, we can put the wording and a non-binding project sequencing narrative.
Yeah, just so you can see roughly that idea. I mean, they know what the infrastructure is, right? I mean, it's not like they don't have
Right.
an idea what it is.
No.
And then you got like you got all but one other thing that I had on there. Remember what it was?
I thought we got it all. I thought we got the
Upsizing reimbursements inside the PID. So like if a developer's, or if they're gonna upsize them
On the city's behalf.
on the city's behalf or whoever, and the PID's still creating for them, is the city reimbursed, or does it?
Or do we do a pioneering agreement when somebody else ties into it? They
Well, that's the
pay.
thing, the taxpayers are already paying for that, so why would the city pay for it with taxpayer money? That was the whole argument that's been brought up a bunch of times in other places, not this one, but that's part of this thing, is that if you're gonna put that in there, then, you know, if you
You
want
can't
to
size
control
it for your project. It's got to be sized for the area, right?
Well,
That's the
no,
whole basis of it.
but the whole thing is if the city asks you to upsize it in a PID, they're using that PID money to pay for it, why would the city reimburse the PID? It's already being paid for.
Well,
by-
because I just don't know if the right
we
thing
would
is.
I don't know if it
do
is
that or
either,
not.
you know,
I
that's-
wouldn't suggest that we reimburse them, but we probably ought to be willing to sign a pioneering agreement with the PID.
Yeah.
It says that if any other areas.
Any other
that are
developer
serviced by
beyond that.
Additional capacity come online that we're supposed to charge them their proportional share of the
Reimburse
cost
them,
and
yeah.
reimburse the PID up to.
Be reimbursed by a developer, not the city. because-
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, the developer.
That's
Yeah,
what
that's
pioneering agreement.
pioneering agreement. Yeah.
I don't know if that should be put in there.
Matt, go ahead.
I'll only comment if you want me to.
Go
but,
ahead. No, it's-
So this is actually another issue that has come up in Hurricane because the PIDs that we have there that are active have gone to Hurricane City and said, look, we've built all this infrastructure that's in your capital facilities plan. We're entitled to an impact fee credit or reimbursement. And Hurricane City has taken the position that, well, PID, you're not a developer, so you're not entitled to a reimbursement. But the PID is the one that's paying for it. So I'll just tell you, this is an issue that we're actually taking to the state property rights ombudsman. Hurricane City doesn't know that yet, but they will very soon.
They do now.
Yeah. So, so I personally have a pretty strong opinion about that. I'm sure your attorney could, share his thoughts too. But I just think that's a question of what the Impact Fee Act requires. It's not even a question of whether this is a PID or not. It's just, the Impact Fee Act says that if you've collected money to pay for a certain improvement and somebody else builds it, that has to be accounted for somehow. So that's really the question. And again, I have a different opinion than Hurricane City, and I guess we'll see who prevails.
That's why
on
we're
that.
having the conversation, is to figure out what, like, this is the best time ever is to put that in there, is to determine.
But I guess the point I'm
Well,
making
this
is the Impact Fee Act is going to require you to do whatever it requires, regardless of what you put in this.
Yeah, this is
So-
just simply our policy and why we might consider a deviation from our policy. And I don't know that it has to be completely exhaustive. And that would definitely be something that we may want to look at and deal with in our local agreement with this.
But if we collected impact fees, if we've identified an area that needed an impact fee, and we've collected it from our tax basis, and then we took funds from the city that we've collected from our taxpayers and contributed to the upsize of that line that benefits our citizens, then what would be the?
Then there is no.
Because
Right.
basically you would take that money, it goes to back to the PID, not to the developer, and then that PID has more money to put in more infrastructure, right? So it's basically a cost sharing.
Yeah.
I'm speaking out loud, trying to make sure I
No,
got
that
my head
makes
wrapped around, and I
sense. That makes
apologize.
sense.
But
But if the city didn't need that, we do a pioneering agreement, and we've done it with the sewer district and other places, is you'll put a big line and they'll upsize it. Then when another developer ties into it, they have to pay.
Well, did
You know,
the
pay
ones
it.
in Hurricane just upsize the line, or did Hurricane City ask them to upsize the line? Because that seems counterproductive. If they just upsize the line, and then wanted to
I think
reimburse
he's saying
them.
they put in not really oversized, they just put in the infrastructure, and now they're gonna pay impact fees on top of it after they paid for it, so.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, essentially it's things that are specifically identified in Hurricane's capital, impact fee
Facility
capital
plan.
facilities
Yeah.
plan. You know, they've had the PID go out and build it. And then when the PID came back and said, hey, you know, how do we account for this? They've said, oh, we don't have to do that. So I think that's a different, I
Yeah, a little bit
agree.
different.
The
Yeah,
scenario
that's
you're
a little
talking
bit
about,
different.
Mayor, is
It-
a different scenario.
That's a little bit different scenario, but.
Yeah, that's different. In Tokerville, what we're doing, if we are working to upsize something that's in our capital facilities, we're paying for that out of our capital. We're paying for that out of impact fees. We're not having the developer build it and then going back. If Tokerville City is asking, like, for example, Anderson Junction, when we put in that culinary water line up there, right? We worked with the water district, we worked with those, and that is listed in our capital project. They constructed part of that, but the upsizing of that and the additional that went into that, we paid for that capital project out of our impact fees. So we haven't had to enter into a reimbursement in that situation. We've just been paying our share when we asked to upsize.
But there could be a situation where, because of the location of some public infrastructure, we
Sure.
really would like them to upsize it.
I'm just saying
And we
it
don't
could
have the
happen in
money to pay
future.
for it. At that point in time, we're asking the developer, will you front the cost? And we will agree to enter into a pioneering agreement, which says we will then, if anybody else connects to this system or this improvement that you're building, to utilize its excess capacity that you're creating, that you don't have to build, you only have to build enough to service your development, then we'll collect a fee from them for their proportional share, and we'll remit it to you, but only for a period of time. That seems to me like the way to do it. Generally, we should be using impact fees if we have the money, but there could be situations where it just, the nature of the thing is it's too big. It's more money than what we have in our.
Dollars, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Sure, and that, I'm just saying that could potentially happen in the future. I'm just saying as of right now, we don't have that situation that Hurricane's in where we,
Well,
you know,
that's the whole
quote
thing about
unquote, owe a
creating these policies
developer
to
or
prevent
don't.
that situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly.
Well, it sounds like, I think we could maybe skip that one until we figure out what happens in her. And then we can readdress it. I mean,
Well,
someone's gonna figure
a
it out
pioneering
for us.
agreement is different than.
I know that is, but what
yeah,
they're doing
the
will tell us
impact
what we
fee.
need to do.
Yep. Any other questions on this?
I'm good. I think you did a pretty good job.
No, there's a lot there.
There is a lot
I
there.
listened to the YouTube again when I did this to make sure that I was trying to get everybody's thoughts and points addressed.
Okay.
Well, so our policy is that we're not
We're not going
Number
to.
two.
we're not going to get down to this resolution stuff most of the time. It's just no PID.
Unless, and here's the unlesses.
Yeah, then you could, unless you can check all those boxes in
Unless you
three.
can, yeah. And that was my question. How many boxes do you need to check? I mean, is that a subjective issue that the city council has to decide?
Yeah.
Or do they have to meet every single requirement that we have down here?
Well, you gotta have discretion at.
Yeah, some of
those will
these
never
things,
even
the
apply.
findings that you're gonna have to make are pretty, like, for
Right,
instance,
so-
the maximum burden and length of burden that will be placed on the future property owners within the pit will be minimal. What
What's
is minimal?
minimal?
Yeah.
You guys just need to find that.
So, yeah,
I always say that certain public infrastructure costs a lot more than other types, and from a maintenance and
so
initial
someone's
construction.
gonna go get an exception, and with one PID request, we might allow it if they met three of these items, but if the other guy comes in, he's got this, he's got 3 different items and we'll just say,
Yeah.
no, it's not going to work.
If I could give you guys an example, in Virgin, where I represent, they are on septic and they have been, always been. They would dearly like to find a sewer solution, but they cannot find one. And they can't seem to get private property owners and everyone together in such a way that they've ever been able to come up with a sewer solution. They are considering joining Ash Creek and trying to make it Ash Creek's kind of problem or whatever. But Mike Chandler's been very clear that even if you join our district, that means we might long-term plan for this, but we're really not going to bring sewer up here, up through the twist until you guys really want it. But there is a developer up there who is willing to put all of his land up in the form of a PID and then go and use that money to build and bring sewer from Confluence Park up the twist to their property, which is the low spot for all the rest of Virgin that it'll drain to. Now, if Virgin had the same policy, they would say, normally we don't want to approve a PID, but this is a special circumstance that will fix a problem that has been burdening this city or town for 60 years. I mean, because there's concerns about them, oversaturating or polluting the groundwater right next to the Virgin River. The Conservancy District wants to put some heavy restrictions on them if the town is going to continue to buy culinary water from the district. And so they look at this and say, we normally don't like PIDs, but yes, yes, and yes on this situation. So that's an example of why we have this kind of exception type thing.
All right. I need a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve business item, 1 second, because I got to make that correction too.
F5.
F5 for the resolution 2023 XX limiting the number of public infrastructure districts with the changes stated by Attorney Snow in, what is it, 3I?
3I.
3I, to adding the,
For a non-binding project sequencing narrative.
as stated.
And
5 years on J.
yeah.
Oh, and 5
we
years on
changed
J.
5 years
From
on
8
J.
to 5.
And the date of the adoption, of it being adopted in November, not October or September.
So we need to change adoption to November.
And to change the date
Change
to
the development
November.
agreement
This date.
to, change the development agreement to interlocal.
Oh, yes. Any reference to development agreement should be interlocal agreement,
Interlocal.
because that's what you call agreements between two governmental entities.
I need to state that again.
No,
Daisy, you good on that?
You got it?
She's good.
I'd second the motion, Mayor.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion needed on this item? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, item F6, discuss possible action on a resolution 2023, a resolution of the city council, the council of the Tocqueville City, Utah, the city providing for the creation of Boulder Ridge Public Infrastructure District Number 1 and 2, the districts, each as an independent body, corporate and politic. Authorizing and approving a governing document, notices of boundary action, and a formal and interlocal agreement delegating the certain officers of the city the authority to approve and execute the final terms and provisions of the governing document. The notices of boundary action and interlocal agreements and any other document related thereto, applying of the annexation area, authorizing the district to provide services relating to the financing and construction of public infrastructure within the district area, authorizing the district to provide services relating to the financing and construction of public infrastructure within the district area, appointing a board of trustees for each of the districts, authorizing other documents in connection therewith and related matters.
I've never heard you read so much.
I know, it's hurricane high right there. So,
Mayor, this has come before you a couple of times. It
Yep.
was tabled at the last one. They needed to just revise their maps and the lot lines and then submit their formal application. And then we received those yesterday, so it's before you today.
right.
Have they been reviewed?
They are, right now, they are at our city survey being reviewed. And that's pretty standard. I've gone through them myself, checked the legal descriptions. The legal descriptions are closing. So we require that our city staff as a surveyor check those. And part of that is the county surveyor has a signature block on the plat for him to sign off as well.
So we thought that, is that all done?
Daisy, can you bring that and the items in that business, the SharePoint, just those two maps, so they can see what it was resubmitted. It's the number 4 is PID 1 base 10/20/23, and then PID base 2 10/20/23. So there's the first one. We just, in the last time they came, they had a subdivision and parcels shown on there that did not exist. So we just asked them to remove those and or make the revisions to that, which they have done. And we are in the process right now of finalizing that review, which is not a big thing. It's just a standard procedure. And you can see the signature blocks that are required before it gets recorded down there on the bottom from the mayor, the county surveyor, and the recorder.
Okay, questions?
I have another question too. So here, let's see, the number 1 is for the commercial and number 2 is for residential, correct? So the property is zoned right now business and manufacturing where there's no residential. There's no residential actually accepted in our zone, right? So how do we have a residential PID in a commercial district where we can't put residential? We'd have to do a zone change to allow the residential. What if the zone change doesn't pass?
So the PIDs themselves are not designated residential or commercial. We've divided them up this way, anticipating that future approvals from the city will end up that way. But the PIDs themselves are not, they're essentially identical.
So technically you could say we're going to start with commercial and then residential, end up with a commercial, or a commercial or light industrial or commercial or whatever you decide.
That's right.
A PID's not even bound by what the zoning is.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's a funding mechanism.
It doesn't
to
create
put in
any
land
land
use.
Right.
Yeah. So the division between the two PIDs, the reason, because we had started with one originally, the only reason we divided it into two again was really for convenience and flexibility, so we can consider the phasing of the project, so we can consider the market, what the market will bear in terms of bond issuances, those kinds of things.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a few. On page 13, Daisy, I think it is.
Which one?
The 28-page, what's the title of it?
DRPID governing.
Yeah, that one.
PID,
Yeah.
governing document.
Yeah, the governing document.
And what page are you on?
On page 13, I think it is. Although their numbering is different than what our numbering is. So go to,
There's numbers on the bottom of the page.
yeah, I know, then it's different than the numbering
You're
that
on
we
10 now,
have.
right?
Yeah, it's page 10. So on D, the maximum debit mill levy imposition term. Can you explain? I don't understand that one, where it's any bond issued by the district shall mature within 30 years from the date. But then it also says, in addition, no mill levy may be imposed for repayment exceeding 40 years.
Yeah, those provisions are basically dictated by the type of bonds that we're planning on issuing. A property tax bond is limited to a 30-year term, but it allows for up to a 40-year repayment period. So if property taxes are lower than anticipated, it would still be repaid for that additional 10 years. That's where those numbers come from.
Okay. Okay, so following up with that, then, if we look right above, the mill rate is
0.005.
0.005, so that means 500 per 1,000.
500 per 100,000.
I mean, for
right,
100,000.
Yeah, of taxable value.
Yeah,
That's
thank
right.
you.
Yeah.
I got LA City Schools, so if I could still do the math right. So for a $400,000 house, then we're talking 2,000.
Yes, but that's assuming, because keep in mind that a primary residence has a discounted taxable value of 45%.
Okay,
So
so that's figured in even when you're paying back the PID.
Yeah, so if you have a $400,000 house, I don't know what 55% of that is, but it would be 55% of the 400,000.
Okay.
And then the mill levy would apply.
Okay.
So there is a discount that's already built in for residential,
Okay.
primary residential.
And then that term, yeah, almost half.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that term though would last that 30 years. So if a resident bought a house in the PID, $400,000 house, he would pay that discounted half of 2,000. Let's just call it 1,000.
Yeah.
40 years.
For 30 years or 40 years.
It just depends on how
On
long
how-
it takes to pay off the bonds. So
Okay.
it's possible it could be paid earlier if property tax revenues are higher than projected. But it could take longer if property taxes are lower than projected. If it gets to 40 years and it's still not paid off, it goes away.
Okay. And you're saying it's how it's projected, but isn't that set with the mill rate? So how would that fluctuate?
So the way that this works with property taxes is, at least the way the mill rate works, is a projection is made when the bonds are issued based on what the property values are anticipated to do over time. Because one of the assumptions that makes this work is that when the property is developed, the property value is going to go way up, right? Because right now it's just undeveloped land. And so that has to be projected. There's, a market study, there's financial projections that are made. And then the financing capacity, or how big of a bond we can issue, is based on those projections. But they may turn out to be, and almost guaranteed to turn out to be, higher or lower in reality. So that's why that flexibility is there, and why I say it could be paid off faster, it could take longer. Okay. It's all based on projected property values.
Okay. All right. I got notes. I've been reading and researching and doing all that stuff. So on the document, page 11, on H, the district operating costs, that comes out of the PID, correct?
Yes.
So, okay. And that's just the way it works?
Yeah, usually, well, not usually, always, there is a certain amount of the bond that's issued that is to cover things like a capitalized interest reserve for the first couple of years,
Okay.
when property values are expected to be low. Things like initial administrative costs, the underwriter's discount, which is essentially the commission that the underwriter gets for selling the bond. So there's some things that are built in and kind of expected. If it turns out those amounts are not sufficient, so for example, let's say you get 3 years down the road and you run out of bond funds to pay the administrative costs of the PID, it actually falls on the developer, the property owner, to pay for those directly.
Okay.
And so that's basically accounted for in some of the documentation, the agreements that we put in place with the property owner.
Okay. The annual report, which is right below that, still on page 11. I was reading the Pine View one, and it said their annual report was due March 31st. And I was just curious why this one's due July 1st.
Honestly, for no other reason than we're trying to make these the same as much as we can. And most of the PIDs that we currently represent are at July 31st.
Okay.
So that's the only reason.
Okay. I mean, it takes that long to generate an annual report?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, this is the list of items you can see there that are required to be in there. Most of those things are going to be things that are easy to, produce a copy of, but some of them take a little bit of
Okay.
research and coordination with the accountants and,
Okay.
and so on.
And then, we were talking about, Joey was talking about the list of, this infrastructure that the city is going to require in the PIDs. So when do we actually see that, or when is that part of the agreement?
This one, because
This is just,
Yeah.
well, no, okay, but when will we see, I mean, this is the PID that you guys are proposing. When do we see, or when does the city give you the list, or when, how does that part work?
So in this case, because we haven't defined a specific list of infrastructure in this governing document, if you approve this, essentially when the development reaches the point where those things are determined, that's when we'll all know.
Okay.
And so the PID will be there available to start the process of financing that infrastructure once the entitlements are in place, which obviously still has to happen. So.
Okay, and then the city would sit down with the developer and say, we want
Yep.
X, Y, and Z, and.
Yeah, and this is, again, that process, the existence of the PID doesn't change that process, other than you'll have this entity out here that can help to finance those things now.
Okay.
So.
Okay. And then we just added the sunset clause, but that won't apply to this, or would it?
Does not.
Even though we.
This is applied for prior.
They were in
Prior
before
to.
we had adopted it.
Okay.
Applications prior. to
Okay, and then if somebody can help me with the impact fees. So if, within the PID, pick something, a water line to residential. So you're bringing in the water line and you're doing 10 houses. There's still going to be impact fees for each house to hook up to the water line that the PID brings in, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we're still collecting impact fees. Okay, and then let's say part of the PID, as part of the agreement, we decide we want a city park that the PID's gonna finance.
Mhm.
So then we would not be able to get impact fees for those 10 homes toward the park also?
Well, it depends on whether that park has been identified in our impact fees capital facilities.
That's part of the capital fees, okay.
If they are building it with PID funds, and it is one of the projects under our Parks and Recreation impact fee capital facilities plan,
Okay.
then there becomes a question whether or not.
Which is what we were just talking about.
The PID is entitled
Yeah, okay.
to some sort of impact fee
Okay.
credit.
Which is what we just discussed.
Which
in the last
Yeah.
one.
sounds
Okay.
like it's going to be an issue raised with the private property ombudsman's office.
All right.
Well, and maybe just one other comment on that too. We've actually done those agreements with other cities in the state. So,
Mhm.
you know, so we have impact fee reimbursement agreements that exist. The issues only come up with Hurricane. And just for clarity, what we proposed and what we have typically done in the past is that we basically agree with the city that nothing changes about the payment of the impact fees. In other words, everybody that comes in to pull a building permit still pays their impact fee, but there's some agreement as to a portion of that impact fee collection that would come to the PID to account for those improvements that have been identified as reimbursement eligible. And the reason we like that is because those funds can go straight to the bond trustee, without anybody else's hands touching them, and they can reduce the outstanding obligation that the PID has to the bondholders. And what that does is it shortens the number of years that the property owners have to pay property taxes, because it leads to bonds paying off earlier. So that's what we have always proposed, because to us, it's simple. It clearly has a benefit to the property owners. And you don't have the developer or a PID board having their hands on the funds in between. And so just for context, that's what we have tried to do in the past. Not the only way to do it, I will admit, but that's the way we like to do it. So.
I'm good.
Any questions?
I think I'm good.
Yeah, good questions. Anybody else have any?
I do. On the creation resolution, on both item number 8 and item number 13, it states that individuals are authorized to act on behalf of the city, signing interlocal agreements. So on number 8, it's worded that.
It's not, you've
was
got it there, the
6.
council
That
does,
was-
the
was that
council
6?
does hereby authorize the mayor or council person to execute the interlocal agreement. Is that the one you're on, Gary?
And I'm also on number 13, where it says that anyone, the mayor, council person, or the city attorney can go ahead and sign off on this.
Yeah,
So
it should
why
be
is
the-
the city council
It
not
should be the
involved?
mayor at the direction of the council.
It says the council does hereby authorize the mayor. So it is the council that's authorizing the mayor to do that.
We have to approve it by motion and
Well,
then the mayor.
But it does say.
Right, but
it
it
says
just
mayor
basically
or,
says the mayor.
Council person. I would tell you. I
Mayor
would rather
or
have
a
that.
council person.
Yeah.
So I don't know that a council person one council person should be able to sign any part of this without the entire city council being involved and the mayor being directed by the city council to do that.
I think you could easily fix that though, because it states the council does hereby authorize the mayor to execute the interlocal agreement with each district, just to eliminate the council person so that authority stays with the mayor at the direction of the council.
Yeah, and
Am I reading that
I have no
correct?
objection to that.
On 8?
Yep.
One of those clauses, just for some context
Yeah.
again, one of those clauses is designed so that, let's say, for example, the city surveyor comes back and says, oh, we need to make a change to this plat. There's an error or something, that we can go and make that change and we can have someone look at that and approve that without us having to come back here to the city council again. Or Attorney Snow and I can, if there's something that you council want to see in the governing document that's not there, you can give him direction. And then
It's kind of not that dissimilar from when we grant a final plat approval and they actually bring the final plat for final review after a plat approval to city attorney and city engineer. If I don't like the language in the dedication paragraph of the plat, I'll make them change it. And that's not something that has any real effect on what the final plat of the subdivision looks like, but it means a lot to me is because they're dedicating roads and easements and rights of way and things like that. So that kind of process does happen all the time where from an engineering or from a legal standpoint, we make minor tweaks. And he's just simply saying that if there needs to be anything to that the mayor is, if we eliminate council person.
Yeah, I guess it was on number 9 as well. The council does hereby authorize the mayor. Okay, so that one is,
And I think there's 2 sections. I think there's
Well,
one
that
that
one's real
references
funny.
the signing of the interlocal agreement, and then there's one that references doing all other things required or
That's
something
9.
like
8
that.
is the interlocal, 9 is anything else.
Yeah.
To correct errors or omissions or to complete the same or to remove ambiguities therefrom.
There you
and
go.
on 13, I don't know. Attorney Snow, could you take a look at
Yeah,
that
this
and just
resolution-
kind of let's make sure it's,
Are you referring to certified in writing by any one of the mayor, a council person, or the city attorney? The very bottom line, Gary. Is that where you're at, Gary?
yeah,
13?
on number 13, yeah.
The very bottom line.
Yeah, I'm fine. If you want to eliminate council person and city attorney.
Well, fine, or I'm asking you your opinion, basically. I mean, do you think that basically that's the way this should be, to where the city council is the one that authorizes the mayor to do something?
Yes. And it says that right there. It says.
It says council person.
Yeah, the very last
and-
line
yeah,
says
council person, a council person, and it should be these.
for the city attorney.
Yeah.
So what would you like it to say? Gary, I don't know if I understand.
I'm concerned about giving the authority to sign off on things without the city's council's knowledge or their
Yeah.
approval.
Well, in 13, it's only in a situation where, see, that map has, and the resolution has to be dated within 30 days when it's submitted to the lieutenant governor's office. And if for some reason, because we needed to make changes or anything like that, it goes outside of that, then basically what this says is that it's deemed to be finalized and it can be re-signed by the mayor with a current date that's within the 30 days so that it can be submitted.
Okay. Without the city council.
Because it's not changing anything. It's just redating, it's redating the documents.
Okay. So while I've got a conversation going with you at this time, so what are some of the problems these other cities are dealing with right now with PIDs?
Well, I think the four that we identified in the resolution are I
The ones
believe,
that Joey brought up?
yes. I think we've dealt with some of those in the exceptions, but there were findings that we put at the beginning of the resolution that says that the biggest problem is that we could have a situation where a bunch of PIDs get approved and they could go out and bond and build infrastructure that we as the city do not have the budget and finances to maintain and operate without significant impact on the residents. That's probably the biggest one. And we're watching another municipality just prove these things willy-nilly with some substantial borrowing power. I mean, we're talking 75, $90 million. This one is 7.5 million total. So it's small relatively in relation, but, and so there's a lot of things that can be built with $90 million and a lot of things that would then be dedicated to the city and we'd have to maintain. And if our revenue doesn't catch up with the expense of maintenance and repair, we could be in a pickle as a city. I think that's probably the biggest one.
Well, if
But there's
this is a
other-
little smaller, then what would be the worst case scenario that we'd have to potentially deal with?
Probably couldn't speak to the worst case scenario, but I could speak to the fact that this, we issued an SID back in 2000 and, Wayne, you're probably on the council back in 2004, 3, somewhere in Anderson Junction.
Water.
And put in all the infrastructure. We ran water lines, put in a tank, built all that infrastructure, and it's set for all these years. And so we just passed, and the plan is no, right? This is one that I think fits very nicely into, let's take the infrastructure we have, pass a PID so they can utilize the infrastructure that they paid for in 2004 or 5 or the landowner there, and then move forward. It's not like we're building something out on an island. We're dropping it right in the middle of an area we identified back in 2003 or 4, whatever the time frame was, and assessed billions of dollars to those citizens to get this infrastructure built. So, you talk about worst case scenario, and I'm just like, I see the island issue as the worst case scenario versus infrastructure that's already there, and this is going to finish developing it out so we can use it versus wasting what we have now. 100% my opinion, but I can see lots of areas where I'd be very concerned in an area where I think this would fit well is in Anderson Junction.
Well, and these documents resolve one of my other concerns is that it says in the governing documents that they are required to dedicate everything that they construct. So it is coming to the city, and we're not going to have a PID holding on to and trying to operate some of the improvements that it builds. And
We know how many.
I'm sorry, are we running into any legal issues over the resolution between the city and the PID? So this is a situation where the PID's supposed to be an independent district, so to speak.
Yeah.
But we've got a document here that's basically signed by the city. And that's why.
to create it, that's how it works. We
Yeah.
have to
Right.
create it, and then we appoint the initial board, and you can see in 7 who the 3 that would be the original trustees.
So if there's a problem and we need to get a team of attorneys in here to resolve that problem, is that something that has come up already with cities over the interlocal agreement?
Yes, I'm sure, Matt, you're dealing with issues that have been memorialized in an interlocal agreement with a PID.
Yeah, I mean, the problems that we have seen so far, and granted, this is a very young thing, it's only existed as a tool in Utah for several years. Honestly, the biggest problems that we've had so far is just developments not being able to proceed because of one issue or another. But when that happens, essentially the PID sits and the city has no liability. In fact, that's another thing that's clearly stated in the statutes is the city has no liability for PID obligations.
Does the developer, with respect to paying back a bond? I mean, how
Well,
does that
subject
work?
to they could lose their property.
Yeah.
If they don't pay the property taxes that pay back the bond.
Correct, yeah. So once a bond is issued, the property owner's only obligation is to just pay their assessed property taxes. So,
If they don't ever develop it, they just have to keep paying them. Nobody else helps them pay it. They have to pay it themselves.
yeah.
Yep.
Now,
And if they
there is, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
I was
you're
going to say there is some language in the bond documents that say, essentially, if money doesn't get used, there is a point where it's essentially paid back to the bondholders. And I'd have to, that's getting really into the weeds, so I couldn't tell
But
you
it's possible
specifics.
if I had a PID and it went upside down on me, I could file bankruptcy.
And
If I
I'm
could
sorry.
file
You
bankruptcy
could, but the PID stays with the property. So whoever ends up with the property has to pay the
which
PID
would be
back.
the bondholder.
Right.
Okay. All right, Joey, I know you had something. Did you have?
Do we know how many, like in hurricane, what's the dollar amount of PIDs? Do we know that? Like,
Without sitting down and adding it up.
Is
I'd have
Afton
to
still on?
guess.
Like Afton had done a calculation of what we know, and it was several $100 million worth of.
and what's in Tocqueville right now with the 6 that are existing?
Is it 90? 144.
That sounds
Million?
right, yeah.
Yeah, million.
Perkins was, I think, over 4 or 5 times what we're at.
Yeah.
Right now.
I mean, granted, they have approved many more PIDs than Tocqueville has, so.
Yeah.
What about Ivans? How many do they have?
Ivans has the one single PID for the Black Desert Resort project. It actually, I think other than the Inland Port project in Salt Lake City, I think Black Desert is the largest PID by dollar value in the state. It was originally 106 million. They've since gotten approval from Ivans City to issue C-PACE bonds, which is a special kind of commercial financing. And then they're in the process right now of getting approval from Ivans City to issue assessment bonds in addition to the property tax bonds that they were already authorized to issue. So it's a big one for sure.
What are the state limitations on the board of directors' salaries?
The board
It
of
looks like their salaries come out of the PID too, right? For the board?
Yeah, so the board is actually cannot be paid under state code unless they are residents and registered property voters in the district. So the idea being that in a residential PID, there is some transition point where those seats transition to elected seats, and presumably they would be residents who are elected to serve. And at that point, they could receive a salary determined by the board. But until that happens, they're actually not eligible to be paid.
What, do you know what the state maximum is on that?
I'm not aware of one.
Yeah, I don't think there is.
But that would be within, residents within the PID.
Correct. Yeah, and that, there's no residents here.
Right,
so
right. But eventually.
Eventually there will be.
Would that include?
At least in one of the PIDs, there will be.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly. Okay. And then how would that include commercial owners?
So the way commercial works under the current ordinances or current statutes, unless they change it at some point in the future, a commercial PID, actually the board continues to be appointed by the city council. So every time we need to fill a vacancy, we would come back to you and have you approve that appointment. It's kind of strange. I'll just be honest with you. It's kind of strange because when there are no residents who are registered voters in the PID, the only people that can be appointed to the board pursuant to the statute is either property owners, officers of property owners, or agents of property owners. So essentially you have a situation where for a commercial project, whoever owns that commercial project is entitled to have their representatives on the board, but they can only be appointed by you. And so it's odd. But
They
that's
say
the way
we
it
want
works.
this one, and the council were to say,
We don't like him. We don't like him. We'll get somebody else.
How do you,
Yeah,
how do you,
I mean,
how do you
that's-
make that?
That's certainly a possible outcome, and the property owner would, I think, would just have to say, okay, we'll choose somebody else, but.
Oh, you like my son better? Well, I'll just use him as my straw trustee.
I just have to say, I struggle with the fact that the state's trying to impose affordable housing. And yet,
Taxing the citizens.
yet the surplus taxes from the PID end up making it not affordable. Whereas if the developer goes in and puts a development in, then
Which is exactly what I stated last time. Is the developer paying for the development or is for the taxpayers paying the development?
Yeah, and I
No,
heard your
yeah.
response to that. I looked at it again today and I'm like, how can we be forced as a city to start dealing with affordable housing and then turn around and throw higher taxes onto these homeowners? And that's my
Gary, I
my
think
biggest
if a
concern.
developer doesn't have a PID tool, then he's just stuck with traditional or private financing,
Right.
which can be very expensive and ultimately I think gets passed on to the homeowner,
Anyway.
the end user in the form of additional purchase price, maybe not a property tax obligation.
Well, the thing I think is they're using the PID funds and then taking the same amount back to their pocket. You know, that's the whole thing.
It could be, but oftentimes
That's-
PIDs are used when there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be put in someplace because it's on the outskirts, and to extend things could make development extremely hard to do, hard to pencil, where one person has to come out in front and borrow on a traditional basis and service debt, especially in the early stages of development. That by passing it on to a kind of a long-term property tax type arrangement, it spreads it out over time.
How does we talked about the mill rate with the residential, how's that apply for the commercial?
It applies exactly the same, with the difference that a commercial property doesn't have the benefit of the primary
Tax
residence
credit.
discount.
Right, so they're paying the
or
full
exemption.
They're paying the full mill rate.
Correct.
And the commercial will pay off much quicker than a residential, you know, so that's the idea.
Yeah.
The property value is much higher, you know, there's a commercial property,
Okay.
I think it'll pay off much faster on a commercial.
That's possible, although I would say that's generally going to be accounted for in the projections as well. And
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's true.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, have we beat this horse to death? So I'm looking for a motion on item 6.
No one wants to make a motion?
Yeah, they want to eliminate in the resolution, eliminate or council member or city attorney and make it just the mayor who is authorized to make the changes in 8, 9, and 13 of the resolution.
And Heath, can we add in as part of the resolution, a sunset clause like we talked about? Can we add in that?
It wouldn't be in the
5 years, 6
resolution, it'd
years?
be in the governing document. And Matt?
You know, if that's something the council wants, we could accommodate that. Personally, I would like to see it, if we do something like that, see it similar to what you did in your policy, which, if I read it correctly, said that it's not a true sunset date. It's just a date where the developer has to come in and potentially
justify.
amend and
Yeah.
justify the PID. And, you know, I would just ask for the furthest date that you're comfortable with. I mean, I'll just say this, 5 years in the development world is really short. And I think everybody's kind of aware of that. So I'd be much more comfortable with 10.
So yes, it would be not amending. In this resolution, we're approving the governing documents, and we would just need to say, approve the resolution, but require in the governing document to be amended to require a consensual termination with the city of the PID if no bond is issued or improvement commenced within X number of years.
Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve business item F6 with the modifications to the documents that were described. I was trying to open them back up so I could state through them. Heath, did you make note of those?
Yeah.
you
So
mind bringing
in the
those back?
resolution, paragraphs 8 and 9, the elimination of council member or city attorney is eliminated such that the authorization is only to the mayor to make the adjustments. And then we would add to the resolution that the governing document must be amended to include a provision where the PID through its board would consent to a dissolution of the PID if no bond or improvement is commenced within
5 years. I would just identify
5
the same
years
thing we already agreed
of the
to.
creation. And I think that it would be more than appropriate to say that before we force them to, that they have the opportunity to justify and explain and ask for a longer period of time.
I'm comfortable with those modifications. And I think, Heath, one of the other ones that Todd had brought up or Gary had brought up was number 13. I don't think that was
Yeah, that's what
identified.
I said,
You
8,
had it?
9, and
Okay.
13.
I missed that. So Mayor, that would be my motion.
All right, I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion on this item? All in favor?
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Okay, aye, nay. 3-2, motion carries. All right, this concludes our business items for the evening. We are moving on to our calendar events. We have Veterans Day on Thursday, November 9th. That's the day we are celebrating in Tocqueville City. All veterans in town come down to the city office, and they've got, I think, a cinnamon roll. Daisy, is that what they're doing? Cinnamon rolls for all the veterans. Item 2 is on our calendar is community readiness meeting here at the town hall on November 9th. At 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We will have their signs stating those dates as well. Our Tocqueville Turkey Trail Run is November 23rd, Thanksgiving Day, 8:30 down at the city park. And then our Reach Across America is Saturday, December 16th at the Tocqueville City Cemetery at 10 a.m.
Mayor, with number 4.
Yep.
Chuck, you've handled that in the past. Are we having people come out and help and mark? What obligations do we have with that?
We have,
I know we
Yeah.
flagged them before and then we had a bunch of youth come out and help do that. Are we doing that same thing? And is 10 o'clock the time to have them there? Or we try to do that before?
I think we do that the day before, what we've been the last couple of
Okay.
years. We do that the day before, we put the markers up, and then that morning we go out and.
Yeah, and usually Greg,
Put the markers up, put the wreaths out.
Yeah, Greg
and usually
Turner.
Greg is organizing all that.
Yeah,
People
Greg,
put the markers that are all volunteers.
Yeah.
and I'll talk to Greg about that.
Yeah.
And that's an awesome, I wish everybody would come out to the Reach Across America, because it's always been great. So anybody need any other thing before we?
Nope. You don't
Okay,
have
we
to.
adjourn this meeting at 8:13. Thank you for coming.
And hang in there.